The game. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Michigan. I get chills just saying those words. This game is huge, and it might be the biggest game since that epic 1 versus 2 2006 showdown.
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
We are so fortunate here in the Big Ten Conference to have a lot of good rivalries. This is as good as it gets, not only in the Big Ten, not only in college football, but in all of sports. 1 versus 2. Remember that nearly 20 years ago, back in 2006. I think this game has major similarities to that game. It feels like 2006, but in a little bit of a different way. Remember 2006, 1 versus 2. That was the BCS era. And that was also an era where there was no Big Ten championship game. It was gigantic. The winner of that game was going to go on to play in the BCS National Championship game. Fast forward to 2023. Considering everything that's going on in college football right now, Oregon is undefeated. Florida State is undefeated. Georgia is undefeated. And then you've got great one-loss teams that could very well win their conference championship games and get into the college football playoff as well. Alabama, Texas, Oregon. I don't know if a one-loss non-Big Ten champion in this season at the parity at the top is going to be able to hang on to get a top 4 spot in the college football playoff rankings. It puts that much more emphasis, anticipation, and pressure on everybody involved in this game. And that's kind of why it reminds me of that big 1 versus 2 matchup all the way back in 2006. When we talk about pressure, let's start first with Ryan Day. He's lost 2 consecutive games to the Michigan Wolverines. Urban Meyer had this team on top of the Big Ten and looking down on everybody. So, if they lose once again to the Michigan Wolverines, not only if they lose, but they lose to a team without Jim Harbaugh and they lose to a team with distractions around them, everybody around Buckeye country is going to put their palms up. What do we got to do to be able to beat the Michigan Wolverines? This is as good of an opportunity as ever, considering everything that's going on around this Michigan program, considering all of the distractions. Now appears to be the best time of all to pounce for the folks that dress in scarlet and gray. And when you talk about pressure, what about at Michigan? I said coming into this season, even before we learned of all of the off-the-field investigations, this was a last dance type of football team. Everybody was coming back. Blake Corum, offensive lineman, some guys on defense, they were coming back when they could have went to the NFL. Jim Harbaugh came back when he could have went to the NFL for one final run on this team that is laden with seniors and juniors that are going to go to the NFL next season. And now you put on top of that with off the field, 3 investigations, Jim Harbaugh, suspension. This is definitely, at least it feels that way, this is definitely going to be the last opportunity for Michigan to possibly win a national championship in the near future. Look what's happened the last 2 years in the college football playoff. If they can't get it done against Ohio State, and if they don't make the college football playoff, there's going to be a serious empty feeling in Ann Arbor, especially if all these great players move on, and then if Jim Harbaugh moves on as well. It's going to be a whole different era in Michigan, which is why I think they're feeling the pressure to get it done this very season. I want to talk about quarterback play. When I first break down this matchup, that's where my eyes are really drawn to. Really in any football matchup, of course, we all know how important the quarterback position is, but how these 2 QBs play could really swing this game in one way or another. Let's start first with JJ McCarthy. When JJ McCarthy is playing well, he's really, really good. He's probably one of the best quarterbacks in college football when things are going great. Remember a couple of weeks ago, I did some reactions to the Michigan State game, to the Purdue game, and I said, oh, is this a Michigan offense? That's a pass-first offense. They were really throwing the ball around a lot more. JJ was really cutting it loose in the pass game. But he hasn't thrown a touchdown pass since this Michigan State game. When he's really good, he's great. But you've seen it against Maryland. You've seen it against TCU. When he doesn't have that great game, he can be a little bit shaky at times. Now, the good news is that JJ had a pretty darn good game last year against the Ohio State Buckeyes. They're going to need another performance like that. Don't take this Maryland result too tough right now. Remember last year when they needed a Jake Moody last-second field goal to knock off Illinois in the week before Ohio State? Similar thing happened with the Maryland game. So I wouldn't put too much stock into that result right now. JJ, though, needs to have a great football game for Michigan. And they just, I think, need to be balanced as a whole, both running the ball and throwing the ball to be able to defeat such a great team like the Ohio State Buckeyes. Let's talk about Kyle McCord. No question, he has had his ups and downs as a quarterback this season. There's games where he makes big throws at big points in the game. Look at that late drive against Notre Dame. He made big throws to put them into position to get that late touchdown and win the football game in South Bend. But then there's been other games where he's a little bit inaccurate, maybe throwing the ball behind receivers, and you get that. I understand out of a first-year quarterback. But here's the thing right now about JJ McCarthy. He might, like Ohio State as a whole, he's kind of the microcosm right now of the Buckeyes, is he is hitting his stride late in the season. The last 3 games, 63 of 87. That's a 72.5% completion rate, 736 yards, 8 touchdowns and 1 interception. That's against Rutgers, Michigan State, and Minnesota. Look, I understand those last 2, Michigan State and especially Minnesota, have got some secondaries. Well, let's just put it, they're not very good right now. But you'll get your confidence where you can get it. And I think a big part of Kyle McCord's success lately and possible success against Michigan is because of 2 players that have really become healthy as of late. Trevion Henderson is the one I want to focus in on right now. His return, I think, has taken a lot of pressure off of Kyle McCord to be the guy and be the star. Since Trevion has returned from injury, he looks like one of the Big Ten's, if not maybe one of the best running backs in the country. Right now. He takes a lot because this is an Ohio State team. They got a great defense and they've got a very good running back and they've got a very good run game. This is not an Ohio State team of old. CJ Stroud, Justin Fields, that's not really what this team is. This is a more of a physical Big Ten, traditional Big Ten type of football team with Trevion Henderson rushing the football. I know that's crazy when you got talent like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka on the edge, but that's, I think, been the formula for success for the Buckeyes of Ohio State this season. That's going to be a great matchup. Trevion running the ball. He's been really good as of late. That Michigan rush defense is pretty darn good as well. 3rd in the Big Ten right now, giving up on average 90 yards per game on the ground. All right. One player that needs to really have a great game for the 2nd consecutive year is Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's talk about Marvelous Marvin. He's not Maserati Marv. You know you're going to hear that from Gus Johnson on the broadcast. So let's just kill that right now and call him Marvelous Marvin right now. I believe he needs to have a great game. I think in order for that to happen, I think they need to move him around the formation like they did against Penn State. Force different defensive backs to cover him. Line him up in the slot. Line him up out wide. Line him up on the left. Line him up on the right. Drag him across the middle. Post route to the middle. Slant route. Deep in cuts. Out cuts. Send him deep. Do all sorts of different things with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's the key. Don't let one DB, a corner, whatever it is, to really focus in on and get a lot of reps against Marvin Harrison Jr. Move him around the formation. I think Marvin, he might need 150. He might need 160. Had a good game last year, but he might need a better game this year if Ohio State wants to go into Ann Arbor and win this football game. I think another big thing that's really going to help Marvin have possibly that 150 game, have that 160 game, is the return of Emeka Egbuka. He's come back and recently in the last couple of weeks had 5 catches against Minnesota, but him coming back I think could help Marvin because now you can't shade your defense to 18 side. You can't, double, triple, that kind of thing. You got another great wide receiver in Emeka Egbuka. Now, all due respect to the rest of the Buckeye receiving core in Emeka's absence, I don't know. They were not at the talent level of an Emeka Egbuka. Beginning of the season, some people were saving Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka 1 and 2 in the country in terms of wide receiver talent. They're that good. Having Egbuka back, I think, is going to help distribute what maybe side that the Wolverines kind of shade on. You put 2 guys, you really tilt your defense over to 18 side 2 is really going to hurt you on the other side, and Emeka could have that 150. He could maybe have that 160 game. So having both of those guys on opposite sides of the formation is really going to make, I think, a big-time difference in this football game. So Marvin, you got to have a marvelous football game maybe in order for the Buckeyes to come out on top in this football game. And it's kind of stating the obvious, right? Marvin is such a great talent, but, sometimes the obvious needs to be said. Let's talk about the Michigan Wolverines, and let's talk about their run game because lately they are ramping it up. They are ramping up the run game. They look like the Wolverines of 2021. They look like the Wolverines of 2022. A great matchup in this game that I can't wait to see is that Michigan offensive line in this run game against that Buckeye defensive line and their linebacking group. It is going to be a fantastic showdown in the trenches. It's going to be a lot like the irresistible force meeting the immovable object. Ohio State has only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns this season. Only Iowa has given up less rushing touchdowns, not only in the Big Ten, but in all of FBS with 2. You go to the other side, Michigan has rushed for 31 touchdowns this season. Only the Rebels of UNLV have rushed for more rushing touchdowns this season with 33. It is going to be a battle in the trenches. Ryan Day, if you're still looking for Lou Holtz, if you're still looking to prove that you are a tough team, there is no better way for the whole country to buy into that narrative that you are a tough team than going head-to-head with maybe the toughest team in the country in the Michigan Wolverines and containing their run game and pushing back on that great Michigan offensive line. This is a team in Michigan that has gone run heavy the last couple of weeks. Whether it's because of that's just the way the matchups against Penn State and Maryland have turned out. Those are the games where Jim Harbaugh hasn't been on the sidelines. Whatever reason it's been, that's what's happened. And that's what they're leaning back into. It should be interesting to see what the run-pass differential is going to be throughout this football game. I can't wait to see that matchup within the trenches. Now, let's talk about the health of some players. It sounds like Roman Wilson is going to be healthy and ready to go, according to Sharon Moore this week. Roman Wilson, Miles Hinton, and Ladarius Henderson, the last 2. Those 2 transfer offensive linemen that came in from out west this year, having a fully healthy offensive line, I think is going to be big because there were some injuries that Michigan had to deal with in the second half of that game against Maryland last week. Look, there's so many matchups to break down. There's so much great NFL talent on this roster. I could sit here for an hour and talk about all of these different matchups, but I'm going to close you on this from a thinking point. Roman Wilson has been a great wide receiver. Okay, one of the main targets for JJ McCarthy this year. We all know about Marvin Harrison Jr. Those guys, defenses are going to be game planning for those guys. They are really going to be focused on those 2. Keep an eye on the tight ends. Outside of Brock Bowers, these might be 2 of the best tight ends in the country. Colston Loveland for Michigan and Cade Stover for Ohio State. Won all of the attention. Great running backs. Blake Corum, Trevion Henderson. I mentioned the wide receivers. Won all of the attention is on some of the other skill positions. Watch out for these great tight ends to possibly have a big game. Who can get their tight ends more involved? Maybe could be the winner in this one. Wow, I cannot wait for this matchup. It's going to be rocking in Ann Arbor. The atmosphere is going to be big. Of course, there's a lot more surrounding this matchup in terms of off-the-field stuff than there has been the last 2 years. I cannot wait to see this one go down. Who is going to represent the Big Ten East in the Big Ten Championship? Leave your score predictions, everything Michigan and Ohio State in the comments below. It cannot get here soon enough. I'm Big Ten Ted. We'll see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching Big Ten Ted, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten Ted to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.